Hi, I'm Doug Ladden. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Deliveright Logistics. We're a technology and logistics and final mile provider to the heavy goods industry. Today I've got Kevin Walker with me. Kevin is the president of Accentrics Home, which is the division of Hooker Home Furnishings focused on e-commerce, but I will let Kevin describe his role in more detail. Kevin, thanks for being here.
Sure, Doug. Thanks for having me. Thanks for asking me on. As Doug mentioned, I'm the president of Accentrics Home, all things e-commerce to the six divisions for Home Meridian under the Hooker Furnishings umbrella. And we do everything from heavy, large parcel to small parcel, FedEx, um, all over the country.
So, Kevin, I know 2020 was an interesting year for many of us in the furniture, logistics, heavy goods world. It was interesting for anybody on earth, pretty much. I know from our point of view, dealing with heavy goods deliveries, we went through a period of time where coronavirus forced us to shut down any in-home deliveries. So we went from being very busy in January, February to basically shut down for March and April. Had to switch over to doing things not in home, but actually at the threshold. And then by June, things were back to where they had been at the start of the year and even ahead of that. So it was very hard for us on the logistics side to figure out how to navigate, shutting down and then starting up and accelerating. What was your year like at Hooker and Accentrics? You guys had to deal with a lot of challenges on the manufacturing and retail side.
Without a doubt, I think the phrase is unprecedented that everyone seems to use. I'm kind of tired of hearing that, but it seems to keep rearing its ugly head. Um, yeah, we went, pre-COVID, things were flowing really well for all of us. COVID hit, and pretty much the industry started canceling massive cancellations of orders to the overseas factories, which then created some chaos there. And then within, 4 to 6 weeks, e-commerce was deemed essential, um, which meant warehouses and trucking were deemed essential, so that we could continue to provide everything that we do and what others do, and PPV and PPE and all that kind of stuff. But unfortunately, those massive cancellations of orders overseas triggered a hole in the supply chain. We were fortunate in the months of May through July, or May and June, e-commerce exploded, and we were, shipping twice what we normally would do in either of those months. The hard part there was it depleted our inventories significantly, and that hole I just spoke of in supply chain left many of us in this industry at inventory levels below we've ever been at in our careers. So in one case, it was a struggle to get product, and in another case, it opened up an opportunity to sell a lot of obsolescence and discontinued product because that was what was available. And we all thought that we would be able to get this thing turned around in you know in a quarter. Today, we're still chasing hurdles and obstacles from shortage of containers, production capacity issues, COVID in Asia, cost of ocean freight. So it's been a big challenge, 2020, and still into 2021.
Yeah, and look, I think as you're saying, the factories had to shut down, and then once they were able to reopen, it was hard to find containers and then hard to find ships, right? So it was
Yeah,
even if you could get the merchandise produced, it was hard to actually get it over to the end markets where you needed to sell them.
which caused an entire backup in those factories. Those factories don't sit with warehouses where they can store temperature controlled storage for goods that need it. They had to put it where they could put it until they could get bookings. So it again reduced capacity in those factories because they didn't have the room for the production that was already produced to get it out of the way. And then more recently, you've seen an increase in cases of COVID in Vietnam, Malaysia, and they've had hybrid shutdowns. And overtime has been eliminated, so now you're back to some capacity issues. So it just keeps rearing its ugly head, but we will survive. We'll get through it.
Look, we all hope so. And I know a lot of people talked about trying to move production out of China and to other places in Asia. and people have even talked about bringing some production back to the U.S. How would you assess the likelihood and the success of people trying to shift out of China?
Moving from China to other Asian countries, my analogy is it's trying to take Texas and pour it into Rhode Island. So it was a mass scramble for factories and capacities to take that on, as well as the skill set that the China worker had that was not prevalent in those other countries. Um, Sourcing elsewhere, whether it's domestic or other countries, Mexico, Europe, I think people are doing, depending on the product categories they're in, and they're trying to find alternative places to source. It's all a balance of cost and logistics and skill set.
Okay, I know on the reshoring conversation, there's been a lot of excitement around it, but it's very hard to get that started up in a short period of time. And I think by the time people actually are able to get plants open and get labor forces restarted in the U.S., the the fear is that coronavirus will already have been defeated, and so you'll be left with a lot of less economical plants here in the U.S. So it seems like people haven't really jumped at that option. Um,
Well, and again, it really depends on the category that you're in. I mean, if you're in case goods and wood manufacturing, there's a whole bunch of other EPA issues and different things about starting a factory, uh, with finishing processes and things like that that are almost cost prohibitive. And but if you're in an upholstery factory, there's plenty of upholstery factories in the United States today. Um, but the fear with that situation is if COVID isn't defeated and there's another stay-at-home order and you have to shut your factory down and you can't produce domestically. That's what happened to the domestic suppliers back in February, March, and April. Was they were they were shut down just like the furniture retailers were shut down. And I think the furniture retailers learned that an e-commerce presence is essential today. And not to use that word in too many ways, but those big retailers that did not have a real good e-commerce presence and relied solely on their brick and mortar business, they were closed, unable to do business, and it really hurt them. So you've seen a speed of evolution into e-commerce at the brick and mortar business.
Look, I think a lot of people in brick and mortar have known for a long time that they need to get into e-commerce, and this may have been the catalyst that was necessary to move them online. Um, we recently launched an app on Shopify, and what it does is enables retailers who sell product on Shopify to just make a click and link to the Deliveright app, and then they can get their logistics managed through Shopify. So it's a seamless way of getting heavy goods delivered around the country uh, when you've already done the hard work of putting your product on Shopify. And so that's something that we would not have come up with a year ago. That's not something that we would have come up with 2 years ago. It's just as we saw a lot of brick and mortar stores really trying to embrace the online world and figure out how to finally transact online, it seemed like an important step to take.
That's
Um,
a fantastic step to take. I mean, one of the things that they're also learning, in a more exponential way, is the the survival of the order to the consumer in good condition, right? So, a couple years back, trying to convince, brick and mortar, um, or not even convince them, but those who were doing it were chasing the cheapest freight rates, right? Because that was a cost that they had to put into the cost of the goods, and freight's expensive, but it's nowhere near as expensive as you know a delivery being damaged or a delivery being refused, and then the reverse logistics cost. So if you can, when we can show that the value of a white glove service is, even though it's a little bit more expensive than just a regular LTL freight shipment, the back end cost savings more than pays for it. So we're very pleased. We have specialized furniture carriers in our industry that do really good work, good jobs. And then I think the furniture retailers has realized that it's their best investment is to go with a white glove service.
Look, it's self-serving, but I'd say we agree on our end. But the it's very hard to capture all those back end costs, the costs associated with a problem delivery, and reverse logistics, as you say, are very challenging. They're challenging in any industry, particularly challenging for heavy goods. And really, at a time like this where I think the latest news story that I saw said that there's about $1 trillion of back ordered goods. It's so hard to get the product that consumers actually want and to, have it in stock and able to ship it. Last thing you want to do is start to figure out how to get it back because there was a problem with the delivery or it wasn't exactly what the customer wanted. It's hard. It's hard enough to get that product to them to begin with. Focus on getting it there right the first time. Focus on getting it there in the proper shape, so that you minimize the return, the reverse logistics issue, because that's time spent, money spent, and it's usually an unhappy outcome.
I can't agree with you more. I mean, we've all been trained as consumers, speed of delivery, free, everything ships for free. You know, shipping is free. We all know shipping isn't free, but yeah, but it's a mindset that the consumer now expects. Quick delivery, clean deliveries, and if they don't get what they expect, if it, they'll either create a cancellation or create a bad experience, and bad experiences turn into, you know, future lost opportunities because they don't want to buy from that particular retailer or, have that product delivered that way. So
Yep.
yeah, it's not as simple as just put a picture on a product page and hope somebody clicks on it. There's a whole lot more detail that goes into creating, raving fans.
And look, I'm glad it's more difficult than that because there's a reason for us to exist.
Right.
But yeah, it is quite challenging. And as you think about 2020 going into 2021, and you think about best practices or ideas for survival as you look ahead, what's your advice to e-commerce accounts as they look at the new reality of 2021?
We've seen a complete evolution. I've been doing this at Accentrics or at Home Meridian for almost 15 years in the e-commerce space, and there's been a complete evolution from in the beginning. It was, you know, all SKUs as much as they could get it online, sell it for the cheapest price, customer acquisition costs, and now the strong have survived, and there's marketplaces, there's pure play, and there's brick and click. So there's three real different channels of e-commerce, and they have their different challenges. And going into 2021, it's going to be, who is your partner? Make sure your SKUs are profitable. Make sure you can compete. And it's not just competing on price and driving, the price to the bottom. It's about content. It's about service, and it's about delivery. And making sure the customer understands what they're buying and make sure they get it on time and make sure they get a clean delivery. And if you can do those three things, you're well on your way to success.
And those things are very hard to do in a market where ships are sold out. There aren't enough containers, and
Right. Yes, there is. There are a lot of constraints today, and I don't see those constraints, you know, releasing anytime soon. I would think that maybe we could, forecast the back half of 2021 for some relief. We certainly hope that's the case, but hope's not a strategy, so we have to be proactive and put things in play. You're seeing a lot of articles now about cost increases, raw material increases, ocean freight increases. So inflation's at our doorstep because eventually the consumer is going to have to pay those costs. And the opening price point product is maybe now a different price point altogether for the foreseeable future. When things stabilize, I think you'll see the competitive forces at work, and you'll see prices come back down. One big concern on our side is, we've got record backlog, like you spoke of earlier, and when that product arrives, and these higher prices and demand, slows, now you go from under inventory to over inventory. So we've got to do our best job at supply chain flow and not porpoise in and out of inventory. And that's our challenge, and that's what we have to be, working on daily and consistently with our factories and our partnerships um, and our steamship lines.
I do like that term, that porpoise term,
I
porpoising
don't
in
like
and
it,
out of inventory.
but it's
That was a
kind of
new
like
one for me. Just bouncing, in and out of supply, and
right.
overstocked, understocked, out of stock.
And in e-commerce, that's really really a bad position to be in, because when you go out of stock, you go down the sort on the browsers, you lose your position, and then when you come back into stock, you don't automatically get back to your original position. You've got to get click data and conversions and reviews and that type of thing, and work your way back up there. So the 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 suppliers, the vendors that can stay in stock consistently, especially on their top sellers, will hold those positions and do very well.
And you've been doing e-commerce for 15 years at this point. Um, as you think about the websites that have done well over the last 15 years, um, have you been able to tell in advance which ones were going to do well and which ones weren't going to do well? What was there? You don't have to reveal whether you've been very good at predicting this, but have
Uh,
you noticed any similarities?
yeah, when somebody comes to us that's a startup in the e-commerce business in the furniture space, we have a series of questions we basically interview with, and we look at our like competitors and whether or not they've chosen to do business with them. We look at where they have come from and what their background is and what their infrastructure is. Because 15 years ago, maybe even today, some guys were trying to do this out of their basement. Today you need uh, computer engineering, you need marketing, you need merchants, you need strategies, um, because the consumer is a lot more savvy today than before. Um, now they trust it. One of my customers had said, pre-COVID, um, their about 60% of their business was, I'm sorry, about 30% of their business was repeat customers. And after COVID, their new customer acquisition went up by 20, 25%. And the unique thing about that was that increase in first-time buyers, first-time customers on their site was a demographic of the baby boomers, which is not your typical online shopper
Right.
pre-COVID. And now they've learned to do it. It's become convenient, whether children taught them how to do it or they learned on their own. But so there's another demographic that e-commerce has been able to tap into, and I think it'll stay.
Yeah, we hear stories from some of our e-commerce customers about how they've had to add phone resources because people are calling in to place orders with them on the website, and these consumers don't have email addresses, and so they're
Right.
trying to figure out how to transact in e-commerce, but they're not typical e-commerce buyers.
Right.
Um, yeah, so it is funny how you say you can't just be working out of your basement anymore, starting a website, because many of us are working out of our basements these days.
That is true. So maybe I misspoke there. Unfortunately, COVID has pushed us all into the bunkers of our homes. But
But no, I got your point.
yeah,
Uh, but and I think we're all looking forward to the day when basement work is behind us.
yeah,
Um, I guess the other thing I wanted to ask you about was, um, time to market. When you used to think about launching products and having them ready, uh, how much time would you have to build in? Pre-COVID, how much time do you have to build in now? How has that changed? And is there, what do you tell your e-commerce customers who are, interested in new product? When can you get it to them?
yeah. Pre-COVID, NPD, new product development process was somewhere between from concept to available to ship inside our warehouse, 4 to 5 months, including ocean time. Today, it can be 8 to 10 months, because of the backlog and the backlog of the factories, the lower capacities, China not being as big of a resource as it was in the past, so fewer factories doing fewer production runs. has slowed a lot of that down. Um, the industry typically runs on market cycles for new product development. E-commerce, we're on a continuous product development cycle. Our goal was not to give our customers 300, 400 new SKUs twice a year, like putting a basketball through a garden hose. It's more like, how about 20, 30 a month?
Hmm.
And it's a lot more palatable for them and keeps freshness on their site in a more consistent way. So for the e-commerce side of it, we're working 12 months in advance so that we got that pipeline full of new product.
Okay.
I mean, today we're getting new product because we worked on it a year ago faster than we're getting our top sellers out of production. And it's only a timing issue is the only reason. Um,
Right.
but once we get capacities back and we get past um, this container shortage and all that kind of stuff, we'll be back on that of the old probably 6 months, 4 to 6 months instead of 8 to 10.
Okay. And so I guess any advice to uh, e-commerce sites or brick and mortar stores that are trying to work with Accentrics or just fight out there in the e-commerce world and have some success online?
Well, today, the consumer's not has not been as discerning about product as they have pre-COVID, only because it's not all available. So if you're in the need of a desk because you're working in your home or an office chair or that kind of stuff, if you're buying online or you're at the brick and mortar store, you're going to select what is available, and that might not necessarily be exactly what you want. But I would also say that what I think we'll see transpire when we get this relief and our products come back in stock is, people may dispose of what they have and go back and get what they want. Um, there's a propensity to eventually get what you want if you work hard at it. So um, I think we're going to see a continued growth in e-commerce, in new sales, repeat customers for many of these sites, and I think it's going to be, it's going to be a continual growth pattern for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, there's some question as to how much of the customer base that's shifted online is going to remain there, and I think you know it seems likely that a lot of people will have shifted online, had good experiences, and remain there, whereas
Yeah,
some
I don't
won't.
think I don't I don't think brick and mortar is ever going to go away. I mean, if once people are comfortable back in, whether it's wearing a mask and social distancing or it's back to normal, you know, touching and feeling a product and sitting on it and having knowing you got service in your local community, those are all competitive factors. So I think they could both coexist. But in the case of say your child's off to college and or getting their first apartment in college, it might be just more efficient and more or easier and more efficient to just have the product delivered to their apartment and somebody go in and set it up and room of choice and that type of thing versus because they may be out of state, they may be in different
Sure.
places and not so convenient. So there's a lot of different factors for people's decisions between going into a furniture store or buying online. But I think both can coexist very well.
Agreed. And look, I think furniture rental has become a whole new growth segment of the marketplace. And as you're talking about, kids going to college, that seems like a natural fit for the furniture rental market.
Sure, absolutely.
Great. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for spending time on this fireside chat, and best of luck with 2021. And thanks for all the wisdom.
Well, thank you, Doug. Thanks for inviting me in to chat with you. Certainly appreciate what you do for us and what Deliveright does for us. I mean, you guys do a fantastic job. You're one of our preferred partners, and I can't thank you enough. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.